Hello and welcome to episode 63. You're about to hear the expert panel on house hacking that was recorded live on February 25th at the RPOA's annual conference here in Grand Rapids. It was a great panel. We had a great turnout in the audience, and I know you're going to enjoy it.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
We are here to talk about house hacking, and the panelists up here are experts in house hacking in one way or another. Let me first tell you, we are going to define what house hacking is. We're going to talk about why house hacking is a good idea for many people. Then we're going to talk about how to find a house hack. And we're going to talk about how to finance a house hack. So I'd like to first introduce Courtney Sorrell. Courtney and her husband completed their first house hack within the past year. Courtney is the Assistant Director of Annual Giving at Davenport University. And she's also a founder of, is it Pica or Pica Properties?
Pica Properties.
Pica Properties. Courtney was a guest on the podcast, episode 30. So Allison Cotier is the rock star realtor, in Courtney's words, who helped her and her husband find their first house hack. Allison works for Compass Realty Services, and she's the #1 multifamily broker in West Michigan. She's a board member of the RPOA, and she also runs the Millionaire Mastermind Group. Allison, you can hear her on episode number 38 of the podcast. Kevin Murphy completed his first house hack within the past year. And he used a little-known loan to acquire the property, and he also rolled in about $30,000 in rehab expenses to do it. So he's going to talk about that today. Kevin is a strategic pricing analyst for Meyer, and he's also a CrossFit trainer and public speaker. You can hear Kevin on episode 31 of the podcast. Next, we have Josh Smith. Josh, thanks for being here. This is Josh's first episode of the podcast, so you can hear him on right here today for the first time. Josh was instrumental in helping Kevin remodel his first house hack using an FHA 203K mortgage. Josh was the owner of Front Porch Group, which focused on the niche of remodeling homes using 203K loans. And he's currently the sales manager at Treadstone Mortgage, which specializes in residential home mortgages, including FHA renovation loans. So I'm going to get started with the questions. Courtney, I'm going to start with you. Okay. Do us a favor and just kind of set the table and tell us, what is house hacking? For those who are not familiar with house hacking and are curious about the term, please define it in your own terms.
Sure. I think that house hacking is really just a newer term for something that people have been doing for centuries, really. So it's just maximizing your house with other people, maybe other people paying that mortgage. So in my particular circumstance, I'm living in one piece of a duplex. Other people might do roommate situations, or maybe even a fourplex that a person lives in one unit and rents out the other three for income or covering mortgage, that kind of thing.
Great. And give us, so you've done a house hack within the past year. Tell us kind of what that was and how it worked out for you.
So I own 2 duplexes in the Grand Rapids area. The house that I currently live in is an up-down duplex in the northwest side. And I currently have a tenant in the downstairs unit, and I'm living in the upstairs. And I'm lucky enough to have decent rent in that downstairs unit to cover my entire mortgage, taxes, insurance, all of that.
So a house hack, it can be a duplex, buying a duplex, living in one side, renting out the other side. But it can be a multifamily too. It could be a 3-unit, a 4-unit, a 5-unit, all the way up. But it's really about living in one of the units and letting the rent income from the other units pay for as much of your expenses as possible.
Right. And I think people have been doing it for centuries because, whenever we're in college or, just starting out, I think most of us have that roommate sort of situation, and that's a form of house hacking too.
Yep, sure. Renting out rooms to roommates. Absolutely. And we'll come back to your experience house hacking. But first, Kevin, I want to go to you. Tell us why house hacking is a good idea. What is the benefit of house hacking?
Sure. So for me, as we talked about on the podcast, as I finished up my MBA at Grand Valley, I was starting to get sick of paying rent and feeling like I was wasting money in some sense every month. So for me, it was, I want to figure out a way that I can stop having to pay rent. And that was kind of my premise. From there, I decided to investigate. Originally, I was just going to buy a house and rent out a couple of rooms to some roommates that I currently had. And then from there, once I started to do a little bit of investigating, I realized that maybe a duplex would give me a little bit more privacy. I would have to worry a little bit less about roommates, but then I could also rent out the other half. So that's what I ended up doing. I did a duplex as well. I actually live on the bottom and not the top of mine. But did the same thing. Found a place that I really liked, did an interesting sort of loan that we'll get into a little bit more, an FHA 203K loan. Fixed up the house a little bit. I currently live in the bottom portion of my duplex. I have renters upstairs. Same thing. They pay for everything in my monthly payment and actually make a little bit of money each month off of their rent. So it's a pretty good setup.
Yeah, well, let's talk numbers with both you and Courtney here. So for you, Kevin, your mortgage, if you include principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, how much is that per month?
So my monthly payment, once you've got all of that stuff rolled in, is approximately $930 a month.
$930 a month.
Yep.
For this duplex.
That's right.
And how much rent income are you getting from the other unit?
From the upstairs unit, I get $1,000 a month, and I haven't had any issue whatsoever. Excuse me, any issue whatsoever getting that filled with tenants. In fact, I actually haven't been able to get it listed both times. As soon as there were just a little bit of word of mouth through some friends, had people basically knocking on my door to try to get it filled. So I think I could probably raise the rent a little bit, but I've got really great tenants upstairs, so it's pretty good the way that I've got it right now.
And are you still renting out one of your rooms to a friend?
Yes.
In your own unit?
Yes, that's right. So I had a friend that was in the MBA program with me as well, and when I decided to do this, kind of just offered up the opportunity that he could live in the side that I would be on as well while I was fixing it up, and I would let him have a little bit reduced rent because I was still kind of fixing it up along the way. So he pays $300 a month, which is, for him, it's great location. He's saving up a little bit of money as well. And for me, that's just a couple $100 extra a month because the other side pays for the whole mortgage payment.
Yeah, so if it were just the other side, you'd still have, almost $100 in cash flow.
That's right.
But with your roommate, you have almost $400 in cash flow.
That's right.
So not only are you living for free in your duplex, but you're putting $400 a month in your pocket.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. We'll come back to you and talk about how you were able to acquire that property. Courtney, let's go back to you and just tell us your situation with your house hack.
Sure. So mine, I don't have any roommates going on, so it's just completely separated. But I purchased mine for sounds like a little bit less than Kevin purchased his with rehab, and my all-in costs with mortgage and taxes and insurance is just under $600 a month, and my downstairs unit rents for $875 a month.
So just under $600 for your mortgage. Mm-hmm. Including principal, interest, tax, insurance, and you're renting the other unit for how much? $875. $875. So that's just over $275 a month in cash flow. Plus, you are you have no mortgage expense because your other unit is paying it for you.
Right. Yeah. It's a good deal.
That's fantastic. Great. So let's Allison, let's go to you next and talk about how you helped Courtney find her house hack, and you're the number one multifamily broker in West Michigan. So you kind of understand the market and maybe the difficulties or challenges of finding this type of property, but you've helped many people do it.
Well, I also am a former house hacker, so I lived in an owner-occupied duplex for 10 years on my own, and then I moved to have a little bigger house once I had a child, and that mortgage payment comes, and I realized that I had to pay the entire thing all by myself, and that was a really kind of hard thing to wrap my mind around. So house hacking is probably one of the single best ways to build wealth, whether your goals are to just do it for yourself and that's the only one you ever want to own, or you want to use it to get into the rental property business and then you're going to keep that one and move on. So I still own that duplex, so I was able to keep that in a down market, buy my house that I currently live in when the market was down, and lose nothing on the house that I had. So it gives you a lot of flexibility moving forward. So finding a house hack depends a little bit, again, on what your goals are. So is this something that you want to live in for the rest of your life? Is this something you want to live in for a year before you buy something else? And that determines what you're looking for. Because if this is the house that you want to live in for several years, you might be looking for a few additional amenities than you'd be looking for if you're just looking for a straight rental property. Maybe you have a dog, so maybe you need a yard, maybe you want a garage, and those things may be more important to you than they might be if you're just buying a rental property that you're not going to live in. So the first thing is to have a conversation with, the client and say, hey, what do you want to do here? And when I'm talking with any new buyer, even if they're just a residential home buyer, I always say to them, hey, have you ever considered buying a duplex? Because a lot of people haven't. And once they think about it, they think, wow, these people are living for free. That's a pretty good deal. So mainly we talk about, things you would normally talk about, where do you want to be, neighborhoods, and then we talk about what rental rates can we get for the other side of this duplex and that type of thing.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Oh, I was just going to hop in because I think it's really great, almost insurance policy. Because I've been, my history and on the podcast, I got burned a little bit in the past, but had I gone in and had a duplex the first time around, I would have known that, okay, maybe I go into this thing and maybe one side rents for this. I know I can get this for the other side. So if life happened, it would be almost like an insurance policy. Like I know that this thing will rent, and I can always count on that. But two, I think we do need to look for slightly different things in a duplex that we want to live in versus, just a straight rental. And I think there's a lot of variation, in the Grand Rapids market, the quality of some of the stuff out there. I think a lot of it was that, I think that was the easiest piece to just be like, nope, I'm not living, nope, I don't want that one. So there's a lot of variation in that quality out there.
Yeah. And Courtney, you and I had this conversation in the past. If I kind of encourage you to buy maybe a better duplex and pay more for it because you were going to be living there, and you'd be able to attract better residents who could pay more and might stay longer. What do you think of that now? Because what did you pay for your house hack?
So the one I'm in right now is we paid under $90,000 for it, and it was a steal. It really was. That Allison helped you. She did. Well, this one actually popped up on the MLS, which is why I'm so surprised that we got it at the price that we did. Because if I saw that today, we'd be in a much different situation. I'd be able to buy a few more of those things. But yeah, I don't see very many of those right now in our market.
Yeah, the market's definitely gotten tighter.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to that. But I want to go to Josh. So, Josh, you helped Kevin with his 203K loan. And I'd like you to kind of talk about that. And you now work for Treadstone Mortgage, so you help people acquire financing for this type of property. So I'd like to discuss that too. But first, let's talk about your relationship with Josh and how you were able to help him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your relationship with Kevin.
It's good. I started a company about 15 years ago called the Front Porch Group. And what we did is we been in the business, construction, real estate development business my whole entire life. And when I saw the opportunity of renovation loans, I said, you know what, this could be huge. This could be really good to build a niche business around. And that's what we did with the Front Porch Group. And so, just the basic concept is you find a property that you want to buy, and it's, let's just say $100,000. You get with someone like Allison, put the purchase agreement together, buy the property, and during that purchase phase is when you say, hey, I really like this property, but it needs $30,000 worth of work, or $10,000 worth of work, or $50,000 worth of work, right? Hey, I have the down payment amount, I have some cash to do that, but I certainly don't have another $30,000 or $40,000 or $20,000 to put into the property to get it up to where it needs to be to maximize rent, to improve the quality of the property. So what we built a business around and did, well over 400 renovation loans for clients just like Kevin is building relationships with investors, with real estate brokers, with mortgage companies, and basically saying, hey, we know how, as a general contractor, how to get these loan products done, how to what works and what makes sense. And that's where we came in and basically worked with Kevin. I don't remember how we got introduced, but connected somehow, and basically walked through the property with Kevin. And he said, hey, I want to do this, 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 and this. We said, okay, it's $30,000. That's great improvement to the property. And then he went and got a, let's just say, $130,000 mortgage. $100,000 for the purchase, $30,000 for us to go out and improve the property. So that's kind of what we did. I don't know if that answers the question directly, but what we did, how we do it in the very, very basic form.
Well, talk about the loan that you helped Kevin. What is the name of the loan, and what kind of down payment did it require?
Yeah, so there's mainly two different types of renovation loans. One's a conventional version called a home style renovation loan, and one is an FHA version, which is called typically called like a 203K loan. Kevin did the 203K loan, basically a 203K loan. Every one of these loans has different structure and requirements, but the 203K loan is a 3.5% down FHA loan, and it's 3.5% of, in the example I was putting together, 3.5% down of $130,000. That'd be your 100 purchase plus your 30 renovation. You put 3.5% down of that whole amount.
So this is what kind of blew my mind when I talked to Kevin, because if you put that into real dollars, Kevin was able to buy a $100,000 duplex, put $30,000 worth of renovation into it, roll it all into one loan, this FHA 203K loan, and at 3.5% down, that was what, just under $4,000 out of your pocket as a down payment?
Yeah, so the numbers were, it was about 120. I bought it for just short of 90, put about 32 in, so it was about 120, and then it was about 4,200 that was out of my pocket after, when we made the purchase agreement, there was 1,000 in earnest. So when I came to closing, it was just over $3,000 that I put down on this house.
So say that it was just over how much?
Just over 3,000.
Just over
check written
3,000.
for, yeah, when we went to the closing.
So you were able to show up with just over $3,000 in your hand.
Yep.
Buy a duplex, have $30,000 waiting to go into the rehab, and your cash flow. Tell me again how much you're cash flowing on this per month.
So each month, about 400 right now while I'm living in it.
So if you're cash flowing $400 a month, that means
Yep.
in about a year and a half, you've paid yourself back that money that you put down.
That's right.
All right. So, Josh, I want to ask you, I mean, we have a lot of people in this room. I mean, what would prevent them from getting this type of loan? I mean, what are the requirements to be able to do what Kevin did?
Yeah, so with again, there's a conventional renovation loan and there is a FHA renovation loan. And with the FHA renovation loan, it has to be an owner-occupied property. So you cannot, if you're not going to occupy the property, that's a problem, right? It can be a 1 to 4 family, and let's say it's 4 units, and you're going to occupy 25% of it. You're going to occupy one of the units. So in very basic form, that's the requirements there. The conventional renovation loan is known as the home style. That has different down payment requirements. They do allow for owner occupied investment properties. So you could buy it, not going to occupy it, right, and do $50,000, $100,000, $30,000 worth of work on it. However, the down payment requirements are dramatically different from a 3.5% down.
I know a lot of you have come in once after we got started. We do encourage questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to come on up to the microphone here. We're recording this for the podcast, so it's important that if you do have questions, you do come up to the microphone. But it's interactive, so feel free to ask questions. But I do want to ask you, Courtney, I kind of want to go down the panel here, and starting with Courtney, is what are some of the challenges that you faced? I mean, whether it be with owning the duplex or finding it, I mean, what were some of the challenges?
Well, I think finding was definitely a challenge. It took me several months of looking, of pretty hard looking to find what I wanted, and then I think a lot of people that I talk to, that are considering house hacking, they get a little bit scared away by tenant screening, and the prospect of putting your phone number out there, maybe putting it on a sign and having people call you at all hours of the day, because you're essentially managing your own unit. You're becoming the property manager there, and I think for a lot of people that's brand new, for getting into house hacking. So one resource that I could share for tenant screening that I love, once you get somebody into the apartment, they look through and they like it. My Smart Move from TransUnion has been just a really great screening tool that I've used several times. It is a website. It's TransUnion, so it's one of the national credit reporting agencies. And the tenant goes onto that site. They pay their own screening fee. I'm completely out of it, and it just sends me a report, and it sends the tenant that report. So I think, as far as tenant screening goes, that is the easiest method that I have found personally. So I think that is a big help.
Great. Yeah, and don't forget the RPOA offers help in that area too. So if you're concerned with house hacking because you're going to become a landlord, that's why the RPOA is so important, because we offer classes, training, we help you with the screening as well. So it's a good thing you're here to learn all about the RPOA too. Yes.
Well, and RPOA is great for forms. Once you have a certain level membership, you can do all of the fillable PDF forms on the website. So, your standard lease and your mold addendums and lead-based paint and all of that stuff. So, you can make this very, very easy on yourself and as paperless as possible right up until the end.
Great. And Allison, I want to hear what challenges you see out there, but I know you've also talked about that concern about who your neighbor might be.
Yeah, I think the concern for a lot of people is, okay, so I've been in some rental properties, or I've lived in some rental properties, and I've lived next to some people that I didn't really want to live with. So I'm not sure I want to, live in a house that I own, that I'm going to call my own, that I'm going to have to live with people that maybe I don't want to, be next to. So obviously everyone's concerned about fair housing, and you always want to follow fair housing rules. But fair housing does allow for this, understanding that, hey, you own this house and maybe you want to be, have a little more say in who you're going to live with. So if you live in a duplex in Michigan and it is your only property, you are allowed to have a say in who you live there. So let's say, I don't like plaid shirts, so I'm not renting to that guy. And that can be as simple as that. Or I don't like people with glasses or whatever. But it allows you to have a say in that. And what I always tell people, my experience when I had my house hack was, I think I had 3 sets of tenants over the 10 years, and I never even cleaned between the tenants because they were that great. So when someone shows up and you say, hey, look, I live here, if you're going to be doing whatever it is that you shouldn't be doing, I live right here, don't do that. And it just seems like you get just a really great quality tenant, and word of mouth is usually great as far as finding people. So I try to, if that's someone's fear, I think that can be easily alleviated.
Yeah, I think it scares off the right people, like the people that you want to not live there. Whenever you say that you are actually living upstairs or downstairs, and they're like, whoa, you don't want that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, what were some of the challenges that you faced or still face perhaps in house hacking?
Sure. So the biggest challenge for me was the lender that I used. And the reason is because since it was a relatively unique loan, I had gone with a lender that had done it 1 or 2 times, but the process is so complicated, and Josh can talk about this a little bit more, but adding in the contractor, so there's a third party to trying to get the mortgage, as well as all of the things and the requirements, all of the things that you've got to go through, made it a really difficult process. So from the time that I actually signed the Josh laughs because it was incredibly frustrating, and we had a lot of conversations on the phone where I'm sure he could hear the exasperation in my voice. But from the time that we signed the agreement, when we had agreed on a purchase price, to actually closing was 5 months, I think.
Was it? Wow.
I think it was about 5 months.
Put it out of my memory, I think.
Yeah.
It was that long.
So it was tough. That was definitely the biggest challenge. So if I were to go back and do this again, then I would absolutely make sure that I found a lender that was experienced in doing the 203K loan so that it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit easier of a process. And if you guys are looking to do one, we've got a guy right here that's got some connections, so.
Yeah. And Kevin, I went back and listened to your episode again, and I think the theme was persistence. Getting this type of financing that you got, the 203K loan, you had several lenders that dropped out, and it took probably 2 or 3 times longer than you thought it would to actually close on the property. And there were many times when you could have just given up and said, you know what, this isn't going to work. But it took persistence, and that, in the end, paid off big time for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of a general theme of this being successful for me, was persistence. Sort of, yeah, I guess that overarched the whole project, because from the very beginning, I had some difficulty, and then I had difficulty finding a property, and then I found a property that I loved, but it needed a ton of work. So what do you do at that point? But kind of, yeah, that general theme of persistence got me through, and it's been really successful thus far.
Right. And Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of couples on what Kevin said. My idea, or comments on the challenges that anybody's going to have, or the pitfalls to look out for, is to make sure that if you're going to do this and do the renovation financing piece of it, I preach this for 15 years, whether it's us or not, find a contractor that has their head screwed on right and knows how to do these loan products. Might not be necessarily the cheapest contractor around, but if they've done them, they understand it, they get it, they have patience, they have product knowledge is huge. Finding a real estate agent that understands it, gets it, embraces it is huge. And finding a lender that understands it, gets it, embraces it, knows the process. If you can align those 3 pieces, renovation loans can be successful. If any one of those is out of kilter, you're gonna have a real challenge with it. And evidenced by we got Kevin's deal closed, but 5 months to get it done is not good, as we all know. So I would say the biggest challenge is making sure that if you're going to do a renovation loan, you have the alignment of the contractor, the agent, and the lender.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So I just wanted to add one thing to that. So I was thinking about this on the way in today, and there were 3 things I think about this loan that really made it successful. Well, 2 things that made it successful, 1 thing that I would have changed. So if I could give you guys those 3 things real quick. The lender is what I would have changed. That would have helped out quite a bit. But 2 things that were really important that I think made it successful might not be intuitive, so share with you guys my secret. The first was that, just like everybody was saying earlier, having the right quality of a duplex is really important, and the renovation loan doesn't get you out of that. So what I mean by that is I had to find a place that was worth putting the money into. So for the most part, it was a beautiful house that had just a ton of value. It just needed a few things done to it. So for instance, they had wrapped their windows improperly, so there was a little bit of water damage under the windows, needed some siding, and then a couple of other relatively minor improvements. But for the most part, and it was helpful to have Josh walk through it with me, for the most part we walked through and it was, man, this place is incredible. Certainly needs a little bit of work, but this is a really great spot. So one thing that's worth noting is, if you're going to do a renovation loan, that doesn't mean that you just go and find a junky place and think that you can turn it around, because there's a lot of work that might need to be done in the background. The second one was, for me, I want this to be an investment property. I want to get out of it. So it was strategic improvements that were, besides the things that needed to be done, strategic improvements that I rolled into the loan. So one example of that is the bottom portion of the duplex had the basement that just came right off the side of the kitchen. And so what we did was we actually walled it off and then added a separate washer and dryer downstairs that's attached to the upstairs utilities. Because in the long term, that's great for tenants. Tenants love having their own laundry on site. And it increases the value of the property from an investor standpoint. So just to be clear on that, both units now have access from the outside to have storage and their own laundry attached to their utilities in the basement. So.
Great. And I just want to clear up any confusion about Josh here, because when you worked with Josh, Kevin, he was with the Front Porch Group. So Josh, you were more on the renovation side.
Construction, renovation.
Yeah, so you were not the lender at that point.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So now you're on the lending side.
Yep.
So when Kevin does it again, then you'll be
Hopefully
the
he'll come
lender.
see us, yeah.
Then you'll be the lender who
Yeah.
knows about the loan.
Now I got to find a contractor though.
We can help with that.
Allison, you.
Yeah, I'm currently working with a client who is buying a duplex to live in, and he's using a 203K loan through Treadstone, and it has been, there's been a few contractor bumps, but it's been a very almost seamless process. We're going to be at about 48 days on a close, which is, I think, pretty good for the renovation loan, and there was some issues with getting the tenant out and stuff, so, I'm ecstatic with that time frame. So.
All right. So please say your name and tell us your question.
Yeah, I'm David, and I just wanted to question Ryan and Josh just a little, which might help people here too. But so if you're talking, you got to buy a property that's renovation worthy. Are you referring to, let's say you have a $100,000 property and you're buying it for $70,000 because it's depressed? Does that mean that you have $30,000 worth of renovation you can make? And talk a little bit about how you figure out what type of property that you can buy to get a renovation loan, if that makes sense.
The front side of it. Yeah. So if I'm understanding the question, it's, hey, how do you determine what you can pay for it and what you can put into it, right? Would that be like nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So here's how it works. You can buy a property for, let's just for general purposes say any dollar amount, right? Whether it's listed at 100 or 120 or 80,000 or whatever that is, you can go in and basically make your offer, right, on what you want to pay for it. And then what happens is you have basically two contracts for this thing, right? Contract number one is your purchase contract, which basically says, I'm paying $100,000 for this. Contract number two is your contract with your general contractor that basically says, I'm putting $30,000 into this. From a loan perspective, what happens is you take the $100,000 contract and the $30,000 contract, right? Your purchase contract plus your renovation contract, put the two together, ship them into your lender. Lender then looks at it and says, okay, we're paying $100,000 for this. We're going to put $30,000 into this, doing this, and this improvements. Ship that to an appraiser. Appraiser goes out, looks at the property for what it is right now as it sits there, looks at what you're going to do to it, new windows, new siding, new kitchen, whatever it may be, and puts a value on the property based on what it's going to be, right? And so that's what determines, I think, to your point of your question is, how do you determine what you can put into it, or do you have to buy it undervalued to get to whatever it may be? It's basically you're saying, I'm paying 100 for it, I'm putting 30 into it. At the end of the day, is it worth 130? And that's where someone like Allison would come in and say, hey, all day long in this neighborhood, this area, with what you're going to do to it, it's worth 140, and you're only going to have 130 into it, or whatever it may be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so essentially you got to figure out what the future value of the home could be, and then the combined purchase and renovation, if it'll appraise for that.
Correct. And your real estate broker is going to be the best person to be able to make sure that we're keeping that in check and not paying 100 for it, putting 100 into it, be 200K deep in a $150,000 area, right? That's a problem.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Hey, David. Before you go, tell us a little bit about your situation. Are you looking to do a house hack? Is this something you've done?
No, I've got 17 units with a partner, and so I also work a full-time job, so it's not like it's my main focus, but we have property management companies that we work with, and so we just look at the numbers more from a cap rate, not necessarily for this type of property.
Okay, great. Yeah, it really seems like as an investment, you would look at a property you would house hack in a very different terms than you would a traditional investment like you're making, where you buy a rental property and you look at the cap rate. Because you're going to be living in one of the units, that has value too. So it's really hard to kind of put a cap rate on that type of investment.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
My name is Brad Dahl. I'm just curious. I have a decade of construction experience with my father's construction company, and then I had my own construction company when I was in college. For the type of loans that you do at Front Gate, is it Front Gate, Front Door?
Front Porch Group.
Front Porch, okay.
It's the construction side of it, yes.
Do you have to use outside vendors, or can you do your own upgrades to the property if you're living in them?
So different lenders have different requirements, right? But 99% of lenders are gonna say, hey, know what they call self-help, meaning if you want to do this, you need to use a general contractor or other contractors. We're not going to just give you as the property owner $30,000 to go do your own work.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Allison?
So I had a comment. Kevin talked about kind of strategic improvements, and the client I'm currently working with, that's the cost of the construction are. So if you're going to hire a contractor to, let's say, do, some painting or some minor handyman stuff through this program, you probably are going to overpay versus what you could go out and pay for it to just hire someone to do it. Now that might be okay because you're rolling into your loan. So with my client, we talked about, what are the big expensive costs here that we can do? So both the furnaces were older, the water heaters were older, so he's actually, into his loan, he's rolling in 2 furnaces, 2 hot water heaters, and 2 egress windows. So there was finished rooms in the basement, but they did not have egress, so they weren't legal. So he's rolling the egress windows into this property. So was buying a duplex with 2-1 on each side. But when he's done, he's going to have a duplex with 3-1 on each side. So he's already upgraded the property as far as what it's worth. And now he's just put in brand new mechanicals that are going to, set him up, for the next, hot water heater less, but 20 years on that furnace. And then he was doing new windows. So those are great improvements that he's going to get his value out and just are going to reduce his maintenance costs over time. So that was one of the things that we talked about. Okay, well, if we're going to do this renovation loan, what are the important things to renovate here and how are you going to get the most bang for your buck?
Yeah, Allison, I want to ask you too. I mean, you work with a lot of clients who are looking to do house hacks. I mean, what is the market like right now? I mean, how much time do you have to spend actually looking for the right type of property to do a house hack with?
Well, it depends a little bit on the individual client's goals, and certainly in this market, as everyone knows, inventory is at historic lows. It continues to drop, so it's definitely hard to find, so you have to be patient. So certainly, deciding if you want to move in the next 30 days can be difficult. But it is really important to define what you want, and I believe house hackers can, depending on what your goals are. Kevin's goals are not to stay there very long, but if you're looking to stay there maybe a little longer, it does maybe allow you to pay a little more. And then with this loan, it also allows you to buy a house that maybe some other people wouldn't be buying because they don't have the money for the hot water heaters or the furnaces. So just getting a 203K loan does allow you maybe to buy a house that some other people couldn't buy. So maybe there's a little less interest in that type of house. So it does maybe open up some opportunities for you.
Can you give us some price ranges? Like if you're looking for a house hack in the $50,000 range, is that even possible, or should you be looking in the $200,000 range? I mean, what are some price ranges?
For me, the typical client I work with is probably going to buy a duplex somewhere between 100 and 150 if they're going to be owner occupied. Just seems like those people just want a little nicer place, and they're typically looking in areas that are a little more accessible to downtown and amenities, or a little less crime rates and those types of things. So that pushes that price up anyway.
Thanks.
And they are available. You just have to be willing to look, and it's really important just to know what actually you're looking for. The client I'm currently working with, he had come to me from another realtor, wasn't happy, and he wanted to buy a 4-plex. And so I'm talking to him, okay, great. So, but I like this and I like that. And then he said, and I have a dog. I said, okay, so you and your golden retriever are going to live in this little 2-bedroom, 600 square foot, 4-unit. And he says, yeah, that doesn't sound very good, does it? I go, well, it's your life. But so in the end, he ended up buying a very nice side-by-side duplex in Kentwood, and he's fencing in the yard for his dog, as part of the renovation loan. So it's really important to really ask yourself what can I really live with? What's my real standard here? So that you end up happy in the house you're in.
Courtney, I'd like to go back to you and just ask you if you could go back and repeat the process, what mistakes did you make in the beginning that you would be able to avoid again the second time around?
Well, I mean, I think in our original conversation, our podcast, I'd gone through one of the big banks that was really, really slowing down the process, and I definitely wouldn't use that bank again.
This was a big national bank.
Yes, big national, top 3 or 5 or whatever. But yeah, I mean, now I've moved on to a better, local bank, and I'm not staying, I'm staying with them, so I'm not moving away from that. ways that I'm purchasing my duplexes are, I'm buying a little bit nicer of a place like we've been talking about, but I'm also looking for some value add to them. So mine aren't completely turnkey always. And that means that sometimes, I get tenants, I inherit tenants that, I don't necessarily, that I don't want to keep. They're people that haven't passed my screening standards. So sometimes those people are hanging on for a little bit longer than I'd necessarily like to, but I don't know that I could avoid that in the future with how I'm buying my properties. I think inheriting tenants is always something that we might run into.
And Kevin, I'll ask you the same question. If you could go back and repeat the process, what mistakes would you avoid this time?
Sure. So the obvious one is the lender, as we had talked about. If you guys can't tell, it's still kind of a sore spot. But one thing that I think is interesting, so I think that to some extent, I got lucky with my first property. So there's a couple of reasons that I think I got lucky, and I would really lean into those the next time. The reason that I think I got lucky is because I found a spot that's in an incredible location, that was structurally sound. It's a really nice place. It just needed some, I wouldn't call them minor. It was $30,000 worth of work that the place needed. But as soon as those were finished, it became a really nice place. So what happened was, because of the renovation loan, I only had to put, it was $4,000 down. And I was able to buy a house that most people weren't able to buy because they just didn't have the money to fix it up and didn't know about a loan like this. So in order to be able to get a property like this, it would usually have to be an investor that just had 30 grand sitting around so that they could go and get this place for a steal, put that money in, and have quite a bit of value already in the property. So if I were to do it again, I would just be more aware of those things and really lean into them.
Great. Go ahead and say your name too, please.
My name's Tom, and my situation is I live in Saginaw, and I commute to Lansing every day, and I don't want to pay 2 mortgages, and my wife isn't ready to move to Lansing yet, so I'm hoping to do some house hacking with a duplex or something in the Lansing area until my wife wants to move down there after my daughter graduates, and I'm just going to stay down there during the week and go home on the weekends type of thing. But I have had a hard time finding a real estate agent that I'm happy with. So I guess for Courtney, how did you find Allison?
Oh, I think I got lucky on that. No, I was lucky enough to get really hooked in with the RPOA pretty quickly after. I'm relatively new to the Grand Rapids area. I've only lived here for about a year and a half, but I hooked up with the RPOA groups very quickly, and you go to several meetings, and you start seeing the same faces, and people start recommending the same person, the same team of people over and over again, and I think that's how I've started to find my team. So you said Saginaw and Lansing. I know that there are some Lansing groups out there, so I would recommend that for sure.
All right, thanks.
I could give one suggestion. My thing to people is to always, when you're looking for a real estate agent and you're looking for kind of a multi-unit, the first question you should ask that agent is, do you own rental property?
Yeah.
And if their answer is no, then thank you for your time, and find someone who actually owns it, has managed it by themselves at some point, and understands that. And that will be a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And then also, get your bank on board too, so that you kind of have all of your people in line, so that when you find something that's awesome in a hot market, you can move and not be still, gathering your puzzle pieces.
Go ahead and say your name, please.
Ramon Huerta. My question, I'm sorry, you might have said something, I came in a little bit late, but do you see it more happening with multi-units, single-family houses for the house hacking?
It really depends on the individual person's goals. So some people like the true house hacking concept of a duplex because it's separate. So you can have someone paying for your mortgage, but you don't actually have to live with them. But some people have lived with roommates in the past, and that what happens with a lot, especially some of the younger people who may be in college, live with some roommates, and then they decide, hey, we're paying this person, $400 a room, $1,600 for this unit. I want to buy a house. I'm just going to take my buddies with me, and then my buddies are going to pay the house, and it's going to be great. So I think that's more of an individual preference. I think both can be successful, and both have some flexible exit strategies, which I think is very important moving forward.
Josh, what are some, when you sit down and talk with people who are interested in doing this, what process do you take them through, and what are some of the misconceptions they might have?
Yeah, I mean, one of the misconceptions is one of the questions we had, which is, hey, can I do the work myself, right? Investors, usually handy or connected, talented. So that's a misconception. However, Allison's response to that as well, what was good, which is, hey, let's just do some egress windows, let's do a furnace, let's do a roof, let's do some big ticket dollar items, and then you as an individual house hacker can basically do some paint. And Kevin did that as well. We did some of the bigger things, and then he did some of the more handier things, if you will. So that's a misconception. I think, setting a realistic time frame for what it's going to take to get one of these deals closed, which is, 60 days type of a thing, can be a misconception, depending on who you're working with and how that goes. I mentioned it earlier. There's different down payment requirements for different loan programs, so they're not all 3.5% down, which is really kind of the golden ticket, if you will, for making the numbers like Kevin has work. So that could be a misconception, or just making sure that you understand that. Those are probably the big ones from a financing side. From a construction side, and I said that before, one takeaway of the renovation loan side of it, just remember that. Find the right agent, the right contractor, and the right lender, and do not underestimate the value of finding those right people. That, I guess, could be looked at as a misconception too. Oh yeah, I can do this as a lender. Oh yeah, we do those all the time. Yeah, well, how many have you done in the last 12 months, right? Kind of like hey, how many rental properties do you own? Okay, great. And so ask your lender that if you go that route. How many have you done in the last 12 months? We've done 100. Okay, well, you personally as a loan officer have done 100, or you as a company? So digging deeper, asking those questions, asking the agent questions, and the same thing from a contractor. Whoever contractor is going to be asked that question. Have you ever done these? So yeah, those are some misconceptions or pitfalls to avoid, I guess.
Right. Well, we're coming to the end of the panel here, and I do want to encourage, if you have any questions, feel free to come up to the microphone. But while we're waiting for someone to do that, I just kind of want to go down the panel here. We'll start again with you, Courtney. What advice do you have for that we maybe haven't covered, or that just from your experience that you'd like to share?
I was just thinking about this because we kind of touched on it briefly. Inherited tenants is something that, somebody looking for just a single family house, you would never think about the tenants that are currently in your multifamily purchase. But if you're going into a duplex or a triplex or a quad or something, you have to think about all of those leases that are in place and how long those people might be there. Or you need to take into account, are those month-to-month leases? What are those security deposits looking like? Even something that we haven't talked about yet, like utilities, something like that is a really big deal in multifamily purchases. So here in this market, we have freezing winters usually. So if your heat is not split out, that's a significant expense that you as the landlord would have to take on then. So really looking for split utilities and something like updated electrical panels and stuff that doesn't normally come into play in a single family purchase is important to consider in this realm.
Say your name again, please.
Brad Dahl. One more question. For the 203K, which is, it has to be owner occupied to get the 3% down. Can the property be purchased by a corporation, or does it have to be purchased by an individual since it's got the owner-occupied requirement?
Good question. Individual.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So you cannot purchase in an LLC.
Correct.
Allison, words of wisdom from you as we wrap it up?
Well, I just think if you're at a point in your life, or you're just starting out and you're thinking about rental property, there really is no better way to go. I mean, I think we've touched on that before, and you certainly see the pros of that, but it really is an amazing thing. And then you can deduct a whole bunch of things, that you can write off. So it changes your whole tax picture. You can take a principal tax exemption on your portion of the duplex or the fourplex or whatever it is. So it changes your tax picture, and, anything that you do to the common areas becomes a deduction. Now, it's not a full deduction, but, that cool lawnmower that you always wanted to own. You had to have that to mow the lawn. You have to have those flowers to put in to make the house pretty. So it does give you some flexibility, not only just on the day-to-day cash flow side, but also on a deduction side. Now, you do have to claim the rent, so there's kind of some offsets there, but the whole tax picture that you get with owner-occupied duplex or quad or whatever, it's just amazing.
Kevin, last parting advice from you or thoughts?
Yeah, so we've covered a lot already, but maybe one thing that I could give, since I'm specifically talking about the 203K loan, is the way that I knew that my contractor was a good fit. Because we talked about it's really worth having a great team surrounding you if you're going to do something like a 203K because it's so complicated. The way that it was really obvious was when we first walked through, it was, all right, you've got to do this because of the loan. Okay, you probably want to do this because long term it's going to be really great for the house. I'm not doing that. You can do that yourself. So what I mean by that is, like Josh had talked about earlier, it was you can do all the painting. You can put up those doors. You can fix the doorknobs. You can do that stuff. But we do need to update the electrical because this is going to be a hazard long term. And while we're updating the electrical, we can split it off so that it's upper versus lower, right? That's obviously something that I can't do myself. So it was really clear that there was no, hey, we're going to add a whole long list of work and try to overcharge or anything like that. It was a great partnership where we strategically chose the work that needed to be done by the contractor and the work that I could do myself to improve the house.
And one of the things I took away from when I listened to your episode again, is that before you even knew about the 203K loan, you had gone through this property and realized, well, you couldn't afford it with the $30,000 you needed to put into it. So you asked the question, rather than just giving up and saying, well, I can't afford it, you asked the question, well, how can I afford it? And that's by asking that question, that's what led your realtor to say, well, I've heard about this loan, why don't we look into it? So the quality of your question ended up determining the quality of your current situation.
Yeah, that's good. You should put that quote on the description of this podcast. But like you had said before, it was the persistence. So from the very beginning, it was never, okay, I can't do this just because there was an obstacle or a challenge. It was just, how can we get around it? And kind of from the very beginning all the way through the end of the process, that was our mindset, and it worked out really well.
Great. And Josh, final advice from you.
Yeah, I like that. Ask better questions, get better answers, right? I think, finding properties in today's market is extremely tough. And whatever knowledge you can have on different programs that are out there. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the construction side of renovation loans and the mortgage side of renovation loans, but use the renovation loans to your advantage when you're finding properties. Ask better questions. Can I do this? Can I do that? And I think that'd be my biggest thing. Use that as your advantage, as your leverage in today's real estate market to think different, because we all have to continue to be more and more creative when we're looking and buying investment properties.
Well, thank you everybody for coming to the house hacking panel this morning. We have a great crowd and you've had some great questions. Let's give a big hand to our panel. Excellent. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.